Jimmys and the Joes have coronated the Georgia Bulldogs as the top team in the SEC heading into the 2025 season. And I'll be honest, I think a lot of this comes back to how much do you trust Kirby Smart? If you listen to the talking heads, there are certainly questions about the Georgia Bulldogs. They maybe haven't looked as dominating over the last couple of seasons since they were winning their national championships. But Kirby Smart always finds a way. He finds a way to build that recruiting class, to put that team on the field. For me, we look at Gunnar Stockton, who's obviously taken over at quarterback. First of all, I don't know if you guys saw him at media days. That man, I tweeted, looks like he's walked at least 2 daughters down the aisle already. That is the oldest 20-year-old that I've ever seen. But secondly, I'm wondering how this offensive line steps up. The offensive line was uncharacteristically inconsistent and not physical, kind of similar to what we were talking about with Alabama. When like Notre Dame decided to put the chips down in that playoff game, Georgia's offensive line wanted no part of it, had no business stopping the Fighting Irish. For me, if they can take those steps forward, protect Gunnar Stockton, that's when I think Georgia starts to cook again. That's when I think the Bulldogs start to build back towards the Kirby Smart that we've grown accustomed to over these last couple of years. Defensively, it's very talented, a lot of talent. You know that between the hedges, they're going to be bringing in some of the best at every position. But Trey, as much confidence as the Jimmies and Joes have in Georgia, and some of the talking heads will say, well, I trust Kirby Smart the most out of everybody in this conference, I'm wondering what their identity is going to be in 2025.
Yeah, and I think we really need to put 2024 into context because this was kind of a Murphy's Law situation for Georgia. Everything that could have gone wrong did go wrong. Carson Beck forgot how to take care of the football. The wide receivers led the league, led all of college football in dropped passes. Georgia hasn't had a 1,000-yard rusher since 2019, and they didn't really establish a stable of backs last year. They faced the number 1 schedule in the country, and they still finished 10-2 in the regular season, won the SEC, and made the quarterfinals of the college football playoff, beating, I think, 3 playoff teams along the way. So we got to put everything in context because for me, until Georgia does not deliver a 10-win season, I'm going to pick them to win at least 10 games. Sure. And this is a defense that, it dropped off a little bit last year. They had some inconsistent games. They gave up a lot of yards to Georgia Tech at the end of the year. They had some moments in the second half against Texas where they lost focus a little bit. But it's a defense that when you say it dropped off, they were still only giving up 20 points a game at the end of the year when all was said and done. So it's going to be one of the most talented in the country. I think that's going to be their bread and butter. That's going to be their identity. They're going to lean on that deep and talented defense. I want to see where the pass rush comes from. I think that's going to be maybe the question I have is how do they establish a pass rush early on? But for me, the defense is going to be the identity. And I think that I'm buying stock in this Georgia offense too. I think Gunnar Stockton, with a year of prepping to be the starter, is going to be just fine. I think that we've seen quarterbacks of his stature and less highly touted quarterbacks, obviously, when you think back to Stetson Bennett, have done great things in this offense. And I love what they did in the wide receiver position. They did not stand pat. They did not let that problem fester and just go into the same year with the same core that could not hold on to the football last year. They went and got Noah Thomas from Texas A&M, who was the best receiver on that Texas A&M team last year. A good big body to go up and get jump balls when you need it. And Zachariah Branch, a speedster. So 2 very different guys, but are going to bring 2 different skill sets to this team. And like I said, I'm buying stock in the offense. I think that it's going to surprise some people from the word go this year and really be a nice strength of the team.
Yeah, Lance, the question that sticks out to me the most when you talk about the offensive production, without a doubt, is the rushing game. They were 102nd in rushing attack last year. I talked about the offensive line. Part of it was there was just nowhere to run the football. Didn't matter who's toting the rock. There was nowhere to go. The offensive line did not get that push. It feels like Nate Frazier is primed to have a breakout season. So do you trust the Bulldogs to get back to running the football?
Yeah, man, I might be the biggest Nate Frazier fan that you'll find. I'm a believer in him. I think that when you talk about a true freshman that was asked because of injuries last year to Georgia's running back room, ETN was banged up last year. Branson Robinson was banged up last year. The offensive line, whoever these the nerds, the big statisticians in college football that keep up with all this, Georgia was ranked like in the 90s last year in FBS and offensive line continuity throughout the year because they had so many injuries throughout the year along their offensive line. I think that all alluded to why they couldn't run the football well last year. And Nate Frazier had to carry the load a lot and led them in carries last year as a true freshman in the SEC against the number one ranked strength of schedule in the country, like Trey just alluded to. So he was a 5-star coming out of powerhouse Mater Dei out of California, number 2 running back in the country. I think that this year, if the offensive line can stay healthy with a better, more consistent passing game, I think the passing game is going to be just more consistent. I don't know how explosive it's going to be or anything like that. I just think it's going to be very consistent. Like last year, again, because of like Kobe Young last year was supposed to be one of their better receivers, came out of Miami. He had, stop me if you've heard this before, he had legal issues last year and ended up not being able to play a lot of the year. And so Dylan Bell, who's a great athlete for them, fantastic athlete, very versatile, he had to play the X receiver for them last year, and he's not an X receiver. And so I think that some of their issues at receiver were also due to people missing time, either due to injury or whatnot. Adding Noah Thomas, having Kobe Young back, your true X receivers, it's going to allow them to do what they want to do with really good athletes like Zachariah Branch and Dylan Bell, which is get them the football in space, get it to them in a hurry, and let them work. And I can promise you, Georgia fans will. I know a lot of them, and just listen to different shows and whatnot too. They complain all the time about run another bubble screen, Bobo. Run another quick screen, Bobo.
Yeah.
Like they get tired of that. Well, if you're gonna run bubble screens and if you're gonna run a bunch of quick screens, being able to do it with an athlete like Dylan Bell and Zachariah Branch now, I think that's going to help them a lot. So I just think that Georgia's offense overall is going to be able to get back to doing what they want to do and run the football more because of just the overall complementary football around them.
Boy, you just took me back to freshman year when it felt like all Texas A&M did was run bubble screens and tunnel screens, crackback blocks. Like we were doing anything other than going north south. It was so frustrating for a time being. But you mentioned the passing game being more consistent, but maybe not necessarily super explosive. I feel like that almost might be the mantra for this Georgia Bulldogs team. Like Nate Frazier, yes, is a freak athlete, but Gunnar Stockton, like he doesn't, on paper, he doesn't wow me as, a Garrett Nussmeier or a DJ Lagway, a guy that's just going to take the top off the defense, week in and week out, and it could be a bubble screen, it could be a handoff, or he could be throwing a 60-yard post route. Maybe Gunner's got that in him. I don't know. I'll confess I haven't seen enough of him. I don't think really anybody outside of Athens has seen enough of him to know what to fully expect.
He threw the one really good deep ball in the Notre Dame game that Arian Smith, that I think me and you and Trey could run out and go catch it right now, that Arian Smith
went
dropped
right
it.
through his hands.
But that's really the only deep ball that like we've seen him throw live in a game.
Right. But I feel like I've got this confidence that even if they're not the most explosive and leading the country in 20 or 30 plus yard plays beyond the line of scrimmage, they could be 4, 5, 6 yards in a cloud of dust and wear you down in a hurry. That's where I feel like this Georgia team gets back on top, and Kirby has found a way to go 11-3 and win the dang conference and still have doubters going, can Georgia do it? Has he lost his touch? Is this team going to lose 3 or 4 games in the regular season? That's where I feel like Kirby is playing Kristoff, and he's got everybody right where he wants him, and he's got his team ready to go out and execute in 2025. So let's close on their schedule. At Tennessee is an interesting way to open up the conference slate, followed by a bye week. Thank goodness for the Bulldogs. And then, Lance, they'll get your Crimson Tide at home. They'll play at Auburn. They get Ole Miss. They get Florida in the cocktail game. Texas comes to town November 15th. And then they've got a dangerous Georgia Tech team that took them to 10 overtimes or whatever it was last season to end the year. So as I look at this schedule, I lean towards 11-1. I feel like if Georgia does get that game against Alabama, maybe they drop to Texas. Maybe they do end up beating Texas and losing to Alabama. But I do feel like for all the questions I had on the surface as I sat down to do this prep for their preview, I feel like Kirby gets this back. And, going 12-0 is nearly impossible in the modern era of college football. I know Oregon did it last year, but you saw how quickly it bit them in that Rose Bowl game. So I feel like they probably drop one just as the token game in a tough SEC schedule. But other than that, I feel like Georgia is right back at the top.
Yeah, I mean, this is their conference until proven otherwise. And I'm not going to pick them to lose a home game until proven otherwise. I think it's been since, 2019 that they lost a home game. So, yeah, they play Alabama and Texas this year, but they played some really good teams in that time at home as well. Only 3 true road games on this schedule last year. If you think about the road gauntlet that they faced last year, going to Texas, going to Ole Miss, to Alabama, 3 true road games, Tennessee, Auburn, and Mississippi State this year just feels so much better, even though it's the same teams on the schedule as last year. So, yeah, 10-2 feels like the absolute floor to me looking at this schedule, assuming nothing way out of the ordinary happens. And even if it does, everything out of the ordinary happened last year, and they still went 10-2.
Yeah, Georgia fans used to complain a lot when they were in the SEC East about like not having such a great home schedule and all the money they'd have to pay for season tickets and whatnot. Well, they're getting rewarded this year with their home schedule. It's fantastic. But yeah, and to your point, Mitch, earlier, I do trust Kirby Smart until proven otherwise. I think this team's going to go. I've got them 11-1. I think they're going to go 11-1 this year, and obviously be competing right there again in the thick of it for SEC championships, national championships. I think that this will be more of a Kirby Smart type team too, with the toughness and the physicality that they're going to play with on both sides of the ball.